I like cold beverage, yeah. I like cold beverage, yeah. I like cold beverage, yeah.
Hey guys, Bobby from New Jersey back for a video again, and I know it's been a long time since I put a video out of any substance, and I have an excuse for that. My wife and I are expecting our third child to be born this week, so it's been a little distracting leading up to now, and it's also 100 plus degrees out almost every day in July so far, so there really hasn't been much brewing going on here. I have plenty of pipeline. The Wales Brew Club had Big Brew in May, and we made some decent beers. I'm drinking a Rausch beer that's sort of on the drier side. It's certainly a quaffable summertime beer, so that's what I'm enjoying right now. I just wanted to discuss a little bit about my plans for future brewing videos, and the one thing I'm going to do is try to focus on a series of videos now that cover one single topic, and it's going to be called an all-grain primer series, and it's going to be based on an article I wrote a while back, probably over a year ago, called All-Grain Primer, and a lot of new all-grain brewers actually commended me on how I wrote it. It was a nice summary about how all-grain brewing works and some of the different mechanics of it that people really do have to understand. But it was a very high-level paper. It didn't really get into much detail. And I followed the end of the article was really just here's a quick way to brew all grain simply with limited equipment. And a lot of people told me it helped them out, so I made a PDF and kept it up for everybody to continue downloading on my website. But I think I can do a little better in a video series. I think I can explain things a little bit more in depth, and certainly as the viewer you have your choice of whether or not to watch the video or not, or if it's boring you can just turn it off. But I'm going to break it down into many different parts based on subtopics, and I just wanted to cover a few of the topics that I'm going to get to in the videos, and certainly would like to hear your feedback in the comments section of this video to let me know if I'm on the right track, if any of the topics that I'm going to tell you about are of value to you, and if I've forgotten any, please let me know and I'll try to include them when I get to that section. But the main purpose is that I believe that anybody who brews decent extract beers today can watch a few all-grain brewing demonstrations, whether on video or in person, and construct yourself a quick mash tun and make an all-grain beer by imitation alone. And that also includes potentially taking a recipe directly out of a book or getting it from somebody who you know you can trust. That's really not the point. Certainly, if that's going to get you all-grain brewing, by all means do it. Start building your mash tun and away you go, and that's great. But I think coupled with getting it done and making a decent beer by imitation, you also want to start understanding some of the more technical elements of each of those steps. And that's what my series is going to try to do, all right? And so the first thing I want to talk about is things like what mashing is at a very basic level, and then also dispel some myths about what is not mashing. I mean, some people do a little bit of grain steeping as part of an extract batch, and they'll describe that as mashing, even though it isn't. So I want to help people understand why that's not mashing and why real mashing is real mashing. We'll talk about terms like mini mash, partial mash, all grain, and what makes those unique. We'll talk about grain types. If you go to a homebrew shop and you look at their wall of grains, all their different bins, it can be a little bit overwhelming, and even the different maltsters have different names for malts that are basically the same as others, but they're using trademark names and things like that. I'll explain basically the different types of malts. Like there's things like base malts, specialties, unmalted adjuncts, cara malts, things like that. I'll talk a little bit about what makes them different at their core, especially when you're trying to apply them to a recipe and create a mash. We'll talk about mash vessel types, ranging from metal vessels to insulated vessels like coolers, and talk about what the pros and cons are, as well as the different types of separation mediums or lautering methods that you can employ in each of those types and what the pros and cons are. We'll talk about mash terminology, like what a single infusion mash is, as opposed to a serial mash, turbid mash, step mash, decoction, things like that. I'm not going to get into the, finite details of each, but I want you to understand what they are and that they exist. We'll talk about sparging and lautering methods, things like no sparge, batch sparge, fly sparging, and hybrids of those types. I'm not going to argue for one or the other. Certainly I'll give you as much information as possible about each one and let you know what I do, and you can make your choice there. And then we'll also talk a little bit about what efficiency is when you're talking about mashing and all grain process, and we'll also talk about different methods of troubleshooting pour efficiencies. And again, the thing is I want to just give you some more information about the different aspects of all grain brewing, and I'm not going to, I don't want to try to explain them as an authority on any of them. No matter how long you've been brewing and what your accolades are, there's always an opportunity to learn something. And one of the things I hope to do is, as I'm explaining the different things, I want to give you some insight into why I know this to be true. I want to give you some resources to also look at to verify what I'm saying, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. It's unfortunate. You read a lot of things online, which is especially unreliable, and you kind of learn that to be true, and sometimes it's just not. I mean, I can say, okay, I have award-winning beers under my belt, so therefore I must know what I'm talking about. But the truth is that my process sometimes works for me, and it produces really good beer. I certainly have my mediocre beers. I've had dumper beers even this year. I've had to dump a few batches that just didn't come out the way I expected. And I don't want to speak to you as a brewing authority, but I want to hopefully we can learn something as we go along with this process, and I can just basically do a knowledge dump. Anything that I happen to pick up over the couple years I've been brewing, I'd like to share with my viewers. So again, leave some comments. Let me know if I'm on the right track. I plan to start making these videos as time permits, and I probably will have some time to incorporate some suggestions on subtopics that you might want to hear about. So this should be good. I hope the series is well received, and we'll see you on the next video. Cheers.
I like cold beverage.